For this Hangout, I've actually welcomed Brad Hurley from our installation and licensing systems team. You know, he handles multiple products, not just CFD, which is pretty much what I do. And he's been going through getting up and running with 2015. This is mostly geared around the desktop product, and that last question I asked was just kind of a feeler question to see how many people had questions in Sim 360 Pro, which is going to be called in the future Simulation Flex. So I will address those specifically at the end because the install team doesn't really handle that product all that much. So with that in regard, if we can go to the next slide. There we go. So just as a reminder for those, if this is your first Hangout that you've joined, all the Hangouts are posted on YouTube. We have it under our Autodesk Sim 360 channel. We've had 3 recordings so far, and we've actually had a decent amount of hits for not really marketing to people that these videos are here, so they are fine. Everyone seems to be finding them. The meshing one's been the most popular so far. And as you're here, I don't know how you found out, but maybe it's through the forum, maybe you got a direct email, but pretty much if you just check out the forum, we're doing this about once a month, and we'll probably increase that occurrence to every week or so in the near future. So, that's it. This is Hangout number 4, and at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Brad and let him go through hopefully everything you need to know to get up and running. So, Brad, take it away.
Thank you, Royce. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and hello. Today's topic discussion will leave you with the knowledge of preparing your system for installation, where to download Autodesk products and suites, knowledge about serial numbers and product keys, where to get a license file, where to find the latest license manager, and how to configure it, setting up your workstation to connect to a license server, and then lastly we'll leave you off with some common issues seen within Autodesk product support. To start off, we're going to discuss some of the things that you should do prior to installing Simulation CFD. First, you want to disable your antivirus software and any third-party products that would limit the installer or block the internet connection from the system. Disabling the user access controls, also known as UAC. This is a setting within Windows 7, 8, and 8.1. Permissions, you want to make sure that you're logged in with administrative rights. Make sure that you meet all system requirements for simulation. System requirements can be found by going to knowledge.autodesk.support/system requirements. You want to uninstall any beta version of Simulation CFD. Lastly, you want to back up any projects if you've had prior versions of Simulation CFD installed. From the Subscription Center, you have 3 methods for downloading software. The first one is the Download Now, which provides a complete install package with 50% compression, automatic download resumption after connection interruption. This requires the installation of the Download Manager. This is recommended for deployments, installing on another workstation, or installing at a later time. Now the Install Now feature is very similar to the Download Now, except that you do not have deployment options and you cannot install it on another system or at a later time. Browser Download uses the browser download method. It doesn't require the Download Manager. The method is less efficient due to browser limitations. The option is recommended for users who cannot use the download manager. Your last option is the virtual agent. The virtual agent requires no login, no download, and can be accessed by going directly to registeronce.autodesk.com. At the website, you'll see the blue Ask button. Another place is the blog, the Up and Ready blog, by going to upandready.typepad and clicking on the orange Ask button. Both will bring up the virtual agent dialog box that you see on the right-hand side. If you click on the download link from there, you'll see options to download product suites as well as Autodesk products. There are a couple of ways you can locate your serial number and product key. If you have the physical media, there's a label on 2013 and earlier versions that would provide you with your serial number and product key. For subscription customers, you can access the Subscription Center. If you're logged in as the coordinator or contract manager, you can locate the serial number from the download page, locate the Autodesk product or suite, click on the version, and you will see a serial number tab. For customers who are part of the education community, during the download, you'll receive an email with the serial number and product key. From the eStore, after you've purchased the product or suite, you'll receive a fulfillment notification with your purchase as well as the serial number and product key. There's another option in the install file where you see the setup.exe file. You'll see additional files called mid.txt, mid01.txt. If you open up these text files with Notepad, you'll see product number, and lastly, the virtual agent. If you click on serial numbers and product keys, you'll come to another couple of links where it says, I don't know my serial number, or I don't know my product key. Another place is you can go to knowledge.autodesk.com and just do a quick search using the key terms quick reference for product keys. One installer plus one serial number and one product key is all you need to install the user interface and the module. The solvers are dependent on the Network License Manager and only needs to be installed, and we'll install the interface and the module once. There are two types of licenses for simulation CFD. There's a network license for commercial use, and then there's a standalone license for educational use. You will need a minimum of 2 licenses: a user interface license, such as Autodesk Simulation CFD Design Study, and a solver license. Any one of the following solver license, Simulation CFD, CFD Advanced, CFD Motion. A license is created for each module and is combined into one license file. An upgraded license file does not need to be combined with an older version of Simulation CFD. For example, if you're running Simulation CFD 2014 and your license has been upgraded to 2015, you can just set up a license for simulation CFD 2015 and remove the old simulation CFD 2014 from the license file. It is important to create a license on the same day so that the issue dates all match. How to request a license file from Autodesk. You have a couple of methods. You can go to the register.autodesk website, or you can go directly to autodesk.com, clicking on Contact Us at the very bottom of the screen, and then Contact Customer Service link. The information you'll need when trying to acquire a license is the operating system, your host name, and the MAC address of the machine you're looking to install the license manager on. There are a couple ways you could install the network license manager. You can get it from the installer files, from the simulation installer files, or you can go directly to knowledge.autodesk.com and just do a search on the key terms latest version of Autodesk Network License Manager. This will point you to the link where you can download the latest version of the Network License Manager. Configuring your Network License Manager. After you've downloaded the Network License Manager, you want to locate the lmtools.exe file. This file is usually located in the default directory c:\install. Once you run lmtools.exe, you'll see a lmtool similar to on the screen here. You want to click on the Configure Service tab and then locate the service name. This is where you want to create an identifiable name that you're able to recognize. Autodesk Service is one name that you can use. The path to lmgrd.exe. You want to browse to lmgrd to where you install the executable. This is usually in the C install file. Install path to license file. This is where you want to locate your license file that you obtained from Autodesk and just locate it. The path to debug. This is a text file that you would have already created from a prior version. It has a .log extension. If one's not listed, then you can just open up Notepad and save it as a .log file. Make sure you select Use Service and Start Server. This just, by enabling this, if your system reboots when you come back up, it's just going to automatically start your Autodesk services. Next, you want to save the configuration changes that you've made. So you just click on the Save Service. Lastly, you want to locate the Stop Start Reread tab and click Start Server. Your server is now up and providing licenses. The next page is configuring your workstations to point to the license manager. When you install Simulation CFD, it will automatically create a file called licpath.lic. This file basically tells the workstation where the license manager is. The file is usually located in the Simulation CFD 2015 folder and can be opened using Notepad. You'll see the server host name as well as the MAC address. Now, if for some reason you're having problems with the LickPath not being used, or you can also use an environment variable, ADSK flex. This environment variable is a system variable that is set at the operating system. This is another method for directing the workstation to the network license manager. The environment variable overrides the LickPath file. This is manually added, whereas the LickPath is not. We're going to get into talking about some common issues that we see in support. The basic solver license could not be checked out from the license server. This issue applies to an environment where the network license manager and simulation are installed on the same machine. You can confirm that you have all the necessary, first you want to confirm that you have all the necessary licenses. You want to locate the LickPath and replace the host name with a loopback address of 127.0.0.1. This is when, again, this is when the license manager and simulation are both installed on the same machine. The next common error message is a valid license could not be obtained by a network license manager. What's key is the error 000. This indicates that the server is running, but there is no feature or license for it. Another possible reason is for the type of error is that you're running an older version of LM Tools. To resolve this, just upgrading to the most recent version of 11.12 will help resolve this case. And lastly, the FlexNet Dialog Box error. The solution for this is to open up the lickpath.lic, make sure it's pointing to the correct server. Another solution is to add the environment variable value with the host name and the IP address listed in the value field. This ends the presentation. At this point, I would like to turn this over to any questions that we have. Royce, are there any questions that we would like to discuss here?
Yeah, so we had some questions come in the side. One, I'm actually going to take presentation just so I can show the answer. It's a little more of a configuration question where part of a software option is maybe installing the local help. So let me make myself a presenter here. Okay, Brad, you see my screen? I think you do.
Yep, I can see your screen.
One thing I'm going to bring up first while I'm presenting is I always like to show the results of our polls. And there are a few people that are considered never opened the software, and I'm going to assume they're probably very new to the software, or maybe from the IT team, and they're looking for some instructions. There's a distribution, kind of a hanging usage of 2012 to 2013. Glad to see no one's using CF Design 2011. There was no real need to stay using that version because CFD 2012 was basically the same thing. I still haven't gotten any questions yet regarding Sim 360 Pro or Simulation Flex. So I would like to know what about that product you'd like to talk about. So I have those questions coming in. And for those that not fully operational, failed, post those kind of questions. Or maybe I'll even, if you raise your hand, I can also make you live, and maybe we can talk it out through the Hangout as well. So at that point, the question I had was about setting the flag for the local help. And if you don't know what the flag is, it's basically an option in software to enable or disable something or change multiple options for a specific setting that you can't do from the interface. So for myself, I have all sorts of crazy flags set. But the one that you would need is called Use Local Help. So under the default list, so you would set this without any scenario or design studies open. You just type in Use Local Help, click on Enter, and then hit the little checkbox and type in one for true, and then click Apply. This way, the next time you open the software, whenever you click on a help button or a question mark, that will then use the local instance instead of trying to use the web. For the most part, our new help system that we have online, which when I say new, our old system was sort of a wiki implementation that was kind of slow. The new system is very fast, so the only reason why you'd need a local help at this point is if your machine is off the network and you need something local. Okay, so I actually want to get rid of this because I use the web help myself. So let's see if any other questions came in while I was talking. Oh, so this is actually a great question. This is actually more of a sales question, but what is 360? Came out in the 2013 product cycle. So Simulation 360 Pro, or Simulation Flex is kind of the suite name. That is the option to basically solve in the cloud. Okay, there's kind of two ways of solving. You can solve locally or you can solve in the cloud. And all that means is that when you click on the Solve button for a specific analysis, it literally sends it up to an Amazon cloud worker or computer, which is basically like your desktop, and solves it up there. So on a one-off job, it'll probably be slower because you have all the overhead of upload, download, and whatever bandwidth you have at work. But let's say you have to solve 10 jobs at once. You can send all 10 jobs, and assuming they're all similar and just different boundary conditions, for instance, then you'll probably get all 10 back at the same time. So it's a great tool. I use it a lot in support, because I work multiple cases at once. So this way I can have everybody solving basically at the same time. So that's what Sim 360 Pro is. It's exactly the same looking. If you look at the title, it just says 360 at the end, and that's about it. Where can I get the list of all the flags? If you open up the Flag Manager and go to the default settings, here's all the flags. There's a list. And if you double click and expand the description bar, you can read about all the different flags that we have. I would be careful. I wouldn't play around with them. There's a reason why they're not default on. So just keep that in mind. Okay, let's see if anyone raised their hand. I could potentially bring people in here. Anyone want to actually chime in with a difficult configuration, or why did my install fail? No, Sim 360 Pro does not actually use Flex as a license manager. It actually uses your sign-on. So like right here, my username is Rory_ADSK. And that goes into an entitlement system in the back end to actually open up and use the software. So it's a completely different licensing scheme, and just be aware that the 360 product line or Simulation Flex is considered more of a term license. So when you buy the desktop, you buy that license and it's permanent. When you buy access to 360, you're buying that for a period of time, just like a Netflix subscription. Once you stop that, you don't have access to this anymore. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay. Great. Glad that makes sense. Any other questions? Today was all about getting up and ready. it seemed like there was actually a lot of people that already had the software installed. So if there's any questions on CAD connections or configuration for those folks that are operational? It's only when it comes to CAD import questions from the design study environment, when you go to new, browse, and you have all these different import options, all these are read in through with no licensing required for your CAD connection, for instance. The CAD connection option, like if I were to open up Inventor, Inventor's free for everybody at least, but if you had Creo or UGNX, Space Claim, those require CAD connection license. Okay. Okay, now we got questions coming in. How to make the most from the hardware? I do get this question fairly often. The hardware on your computer, just recognize the solver is set up to take advantage of as much as the hardware that you have as possible. So what that means that it's going to automatically use all the cores that you have available. So earlier on we had a question about I had a 6-core computer and it was only using 33% of my processing power. Well, once you take into account we only use 2 to the end cores, that's what the solver is designed to be most efficient, and we don't use hyper-threading, that percentage starts dropping from 100 down. So for instance, my desktop right here is a 12-core computer. That means it's only going to use 8 of those cores. And actually I like that because it gives me a few cores to do other things in the background and not swap my, my machine. So in terms of hardware, we're going to use as much as we can. So make sure you have enough RAM. Make sure you have RAM. What I mean by that, make sure you have about a 2-to-1 ratio, about 2 gigabytes of RAM per 1 million element. So if you are only ever solving million element simulations, you can probably get away with 8 gigabytes worth of RAM. But I'd probably still recommend at least 12. If you're solving 12 million element models, you're going to need probably a 32 or 64 gigabyte RAM once you start building up large design studies. So there's no real tuning in the sense of your hardware. So I'm going to end on that question. Can a license from home via VPN or other method? So Brad, I'll let you answer that. I don't actually know what the licensing, I know I could actually set something up to run off of a VPN from home. Sometimes it can be a little unstable, but that is allowed, right, Brad? In terms of,
yeah, as long as the machine can connect on the ports that are used, which would be ports 2080 as well as 27,000 through 27,009. As long as within any of those ranges of 27,000 to 27,009.
Okay, great. Now, one thing I would suggest off of VPN, I would not send a job, for instance, from your home machine to a remote computer at the office. That's not going to run very well, mostly because your bandwidth, usually VPN tunnels are pretty small. It's a lot of data. So I would only be potentially using and studying my results or running jobs locally on your computer. But I wouldn't even bother with the VPN. You can actually borrow the licenses that you need for a period of time. So if you're the only user or you have multiple licenses, so you're not going to run into conflicts there, just go to the licensing under Start and Learn and right-click on what you need to borrow. So then you don't even need the VPN. You get to connect now and activate. That means, so basically the question that came in is I've upgraded Network License Manager or NLM, installed 2015, and now I get a connect now and activate. And I get a response that my serial number is not valid. What you've done is that you've actually installed it as a standalone. So the thing about simulation software in general is that students get a standalone license and everybody else gets a network license. Okay, so what that means when you're at that install screen and you type in your server name and your serial number and product code, do not select standalone. You have to select the network license. So if you are getting that screen, if you connect now and activate, that's a standalone workflow. Okay, so that means you need to uninstall, reinstall the product, and actually use the network license option. So that will.
And to add to that, Royce, I believe with the installer, if you're going through the installer and just clicking next, I think that is the default option is standalone. So
Okay.
if you're taking that option right off, you're going to miss that and not if you don't.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep. Fully, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So right, so as Brad said, just make sure you select the network. You know, if it is coming up default on standalone, just toggle it over to network. So we're getting back on the flags on use local help. This could be, you do not see that. Well, we'll have to look in that. Maybe we'll have to log a support ticket on the use local help if you really don't see that. So we'll take that offline if need be. Can CFD network licenses be borrowed? So I think I just covered that. So yes, just do that from licensing, and you can easily borrow that. So if I want to borrow my design study environment license, I right-click, go to borrow. A screen will come up, and I wouldn't bring this out too far. You know, LM Tools sometimes has issues with returning licenses, so I would just do it a day at a time so that it's automatically returned the next day. And just click on borrow, and that will then borrow it. I could just borrowed it. Return there. I have licenses for SimCFD, SimCFD Design Study Environment, which is a user interface, CAD Connection for Parasolid, and Pro Engineer. Do I have to download and run all four? Is there some redundancy in these downloads? There is a complete redundancy in all these downloads. It's probably one of the most confusing aspects of getting the software up and running. Okay, so as Brad said earlier, there's one installer and one serial number, one product code to get everything installed. So when you're at the download screen, pick any one of them. They should be all the same downloads for 2015. I typically just work with the design study environment option because that's the user interface. It just seems to make sense to start from there. The reason why you see multiple downloads is because really each one of those are a product that you've bought. There are multiple SKUs, and the way the whole back end works is it displays everything that you've purchased. We've looked into trying to limit that so you only see the design study environment, and you know that it's just not an option. So yes, you only have to download one, you only have to install one, and just pick one of your serial numbers and the associated product code for that serial number. So when I say that, what I normally do is pick the design study environment serial number that I have and the product code for the design study environment, and install it from that. So yeah, the redundancy is there. It's not desirable. Let's see here. Can custom materials from 2014 be used in 2015, or do you have to be redone? There's a directions and a help of how to migrate your material database file from one version to the next. So you can definitely migrate those over. Pretty much what you can do is, remember, when you have, let me just open up the study here. Have it. Let's go to one of our classic tutorial models. So in terms of getting CFD 2015 up and running and licensing that while also having other Autodesk products, you can migrate any product whenever you like. You don't have to do all Autodesk products at the same time. When you go to the register.autodesk.com site to generate your license file, you do that for every single serial number. You go, it's redundant, and so for CFD, you'd have to generate a section for design study environment, generate a section for your solver grade that you've purchased in each CAD connection. You do the same thing if you have network licensing for product design suite or for Revit if you have Revit, and you would just append those license files onto basically the core license file that you have. So when you migrate Revit to 2015, then you can append that to your main Autodesk license file. Now, keep in mind that license file designed to also support the previous versions that you've purchased. So if you want to, at the time of doing all your licensing, get it all done out of the way, do all your products, append it, it's still going to support your previous versions, so that when, as a user, you're ready to actually migrate a different Autodesk product to 2015, the licensing is already set up. Okay. CFD, you can have as many versions installed as you like. So we said remove the beta versions. You're more than welcome to keep CFD 2015, 14, 13, 12. You can even have CF Design 2011, 2010, and even if you still have V10, if you're going back, or V9, all those will run separately and won't interact with each other. I wouldn't recommend running a 2014 simulation at the same time as a 2015 simulation. That's not a good idea because it will probably run very slowly. But yeah, you can have them all installed. Like my machine, I go back to 2013 right now. I know Apollo, he goes back to, I think, 2010 at this point on his machines. He might even still have V10 installed. Are connector licenses unavailable as long as the user has the CAD system open, or is it only used at the moment of import and during geometry updates? So the license is checked out whenever you have that study open that required that CAD connection. So if you have CFD closed and you have SolidWorks open, for instance, or Pro Engineer, we're not using that CAD connection license. Somebody else can use it. As soon as you launch in from that product, your CAD into CFD, it checks to see that license is available at import during that process, and then it's checked out while that is open. Okay. Okay, so back to the material option here. So if we go into the material editor window and go to database file, you can see here we have multiple database files. Okay, if you open up 2014, you'll see where your database files are located. And what it would do is copy them into the same folder as where your CFD 2015 files are. It's pretty much in the same location or relative path. Once you've copied them in 2015, just go to Add and then include them into your folder. So right here, for instance, here's my old 2014 database files that I created. Okay, and usually I kind of separate them up in different accounts. So here's one account that I work with, and I'll move it into 2015. Just copy and paste, and then I'm going to select that, open it, and now it's added. And if I wanted to, I can now go into that database, UET, and they have different oils that I've looked at in the past. Okay, so that's how you migrate your material database file. It's actually very simple once you know how to do it. It's a couple clicks. Are higher versions of CAD able to launch into previous versions of CFD, for instance, Inventor 2015 supported by CFD 2014? So this is a CAD dependent question. So when you install your product, we have supported CAD with that QA actually goes through and checks that all of the functionality is there. Okay, and when you install the product, it will look for those supported CAD products for that release. Okay, now that means forward versions, so Inventor 2015, for instance, with CFD 2014, won't necessarily show up by default. And that could be a good reason because we haven't done quality control on it, so maybe you don't want to be using it. But there are different ways of getting around that, and pretty much what I would look at in the help system is manually configuring that CAD connection, and then that will typically allow you to do that for certain products. Now, keep in mind, this is a list that I maintain on the supported CAD tools for CFD, and I go back from 2015, and I've labeled this all the way to 2012. You can see pretty much our migration of adding more products and more CAD options for direct import, and that's our standard for all simulation products. Try to be CAD agnostic, try to support as much as possible. And you can see here for CFD 2015, we support Inventor 2015, and for Simulation 2014, we don't support Inventor 2015. It didn't exist, but potentially you could get around that. Okay. Just look up in the help, manually configure Inventor. Okay. I do see one question here about importing parasolid topographical errors. I'm going to ask you that you log a support case for that or post that in the forums. We can talk about that outside of this Hangout session. Let's see, did anyone ever raise their hand? I am completely open with bringing people in live if they like. By the way, what I'm looking at right now is our new knowledge network. So if you go to knowledge.autodesk.com and do a search for something, CFD and mesh, and 2014 error, for instance. And I like to put ands just to limit what the search comes up with. You'll see all sorts of different knowledge of articles that we've created and actively creating every day. So here's a classic one, analysis stopped because the solvers exit unexpectedly during mesh adaptation, or a mesh is not generated in a model in CFD. If you were to look up CFD and Inventor, how to manually configure CFD CAD connections for SOLIDWORKS and Inventor. So this is where we talk about how to basically register the DLL manually, and a lot of times by doing this you'll allow, for instance, Inventor or SOLIDWORKS to work with 2015. Okay. So I haven't gotten any questions in a little bit in terms of people that we have. We still have a lot of people signed in. So if there are any more questions, you better shoot them out. It's been about 5 minutes since the last question that was typed in. Let me see if I... Okay, so at this point, we're not getting any more questions. I don't want to take any more of your time just to sit here. So we're going to end this Hangout. I appreciate everybody joining. We'll have the Hangout posted to YouTube hopefully within a couple of days. It takes some time to get it processed and have correct contact posted to YouTube. So again, thanks for joining, and we'll have another Hangout in a few weeks.